Hello, I'm Carla Adams. I'll be reading from my book, Ancestral River, A Spiritual Journey for the Living and the Dead. And this is Chapter 4, My Ancestors. The pendulum I used was just an acrylic ball. It spun from a string in my hand as spirit informed my mind. Grandpa was my mother's father, so I struck the forks on the left side of my hologram where my mother's ancestral information was stored and cleared all the stuck energy that presented. When I reached a stream of ancestral DNA, the grief Grandpa had felt when his oldest son died poured through me. When the session was over, I didn't know what to do next, so I left the room. Grandpa followed me. His vibration was calm and satisfied. He looked me in the eye. "Thank you." Still too scared to speak, I glanced toward him. "What am I doing working with dead people? What happens now?" He left my house. The next morning, something inside me knew he was with the other ancestors of the restoration group, but I felt guilty for being too wrapped in fear to enjoy seeing him again, and I missed him. I spoke aloud, hoping he would hear. "You're welcome." In the coming weeks, intuition often directed me to clear stuck energy outside my biofield or those of my clients. Contacting other energy workers, I learned everyone had an ancestral biofield that extended up to 35 feet away from their body and contained the life record of all their ancestors. A person's father's ancestral information was on the right side of the ancestral field, and the mother's was on the left. My ancestors are part of me. I need to restore them to restore me. My mother was still living, but I tuned my ancestral field to clear some of the stuck energy we shared. All her ancestors were deceased. A scrapbook showed their pictures, names, and a few details of their life through the fourth generation. My father was already in the restoration group, but I cleared my ancestral field for his patterns of unworthiness, regret, and not feeling good enough. His voltage seemed higher and his vibration felt happier afterwards, and I did too. My mother and an older cousin provided information about his ancestors. Assuming the oneness was where individuals of the restoration group existed, perhaps heaven, and that others who had died would need my help like Grandpa had, I invited my ancestors who were ready to go to the oneness to be present while I cleared their energy. I completed a biofield session for one grandparent at a time, so I would be able to know which old beliefs and patterns came from which ancestor. Like Grandpa, they came in grayscale, with low voltage, with the personality they had when they were living. They expressed the same emotions and thought patterns I struggled with. I didn't physically see them in front of me, but my eyes tracked their energy. They came from a place where they had been waiting, and they wanted to go to the oneness. After their sessions, I felt their higher voltage. None of them came back to try again. My paternal grandfather died before I was born, but Dad had spoken of a drinking problem that often kept his father away from his family. Grandfather said with sadness, "I wasted my life." I said, "Your life wasn't wasted. You gave my dad to the world. He was loved by many people, and he loved his family. Because of him, I am here today helping restore you and your family." Regret for things I wished I had done or said differently had run nonstop during my life. After I cleared Dad's and Grandfather's energy, the hamster wheel slowed. As I tuned my maternal grandmother, I found that red hair wasn't all I had inherited from her. She was my source of deep sadness, too. She stood beside my hologram as I cleared the grief she had felt at 11 years old when her mother died, and at 47 when she lost her oldest son. We raised her voltage enough for her to enter the oneness, and raised my voltage, too. We held each other. "Grandma, I love you so much." I cleared the loss my paternal grandmother had felt as her father died when she was a teen, the bottled up anger and shame she felt as a young woman when she was taken without her consent, the unworthiness she had instilled in herself and her children, and the sorrow of losing some. Then I tuned her father. clearing the emotions that had become stuck as he died. He said to me, "I loved my family so much." One great great grandfather didn't come to his session, but in his energy in my ancestral field, I found the fear of rejection that had plagued my life. I felt the kicks and punches of his opponent landing on me as the two young men angrily rolled around in the dirt. Later, as I cleared energy from his elderly years in my ancestral field, his stuck energy vibrated of unworthiness and anxiety as he lay on the floor of his house. His energy slowed to a stop as he died. In a second, I was looking through his eyes as he walked to the front door and opened it. Sunlight filtered in. Other grayscale ancestors stood in the shadow of trees at the edge of the yard and watched in silence. He closed the door and faded into the darkness. An aunt appeared as I tuned my ancestral field. She had taken care of her younger siblings, but had never had children or a home of her own. As I worked in a pocket of energy from when she was sad and dying in a care home, she said, "I took care of everyone else, but when I was in need, no one took care of me." My heart jerked. I couldn't see to strike the fork. "I'm with you now. I'm taking care of you now." A few minutes later, in my own field, I was crying again as I cleared energy that had become stuck when I had been taking care of my own children during a difficult time in their lives, but I had wanted someone to take care of me. My ancestral field held the record of the death of an uncle who didn't have children. He came to transition. "Sometimes I was like a father to your dad when our father was not around." In every session, I grew in compassion and understanding for each ancestor. I enjoyed the interconnectedness of our lives. Love flowed like a river through all generations, past, present, and future. As I thanked them for their lives and sent them on their way to the oneness, some of them wanted to stay. They seemed confused, like they expected me to do something else, but I insisted they leave. Where was the oneness? How do they get there?